The year is 1558. Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor, is dead. The Ottoman Empire, ruled by Suleiman I, straddles the Mediterranean and dominates large stretches of southeastern Europe, Western Asia, and North Africa. Under the leadership of the highly capable Admiral Turgot, the drawn sword of Islam, the Ottoman navy establishes control over most of the North African coast. After these gains, the Ottomans are poised to strike at the final Christian impediment to total Turkish domination of the Mediterranean, Malta. Lying to the south of Sicily, the island fortress of Malta rules the passage of east to west. It's the headquarters of the Knights Hospitaller, the old crusading order that once defended Jerusalem alongside the Knights Templar. By now, Suleiman is 70 years old, having reigned long and triumphant. His daughter, Miriam, a consolation to him in his old age, urges him to take on Malta, calling it his sacred duty to Islam. Admiral Turgot also advises Suleiman to launch a full-on attack against what he calls a nest of vipers. Sultan Suleiman, at 70, does not plan on leading the invasion himself. He appoints two primary commanders, Admiral-in-Chief Piale Pasha at the head of the navy, and General Mustafa Pasha in charge of the land army. With great pomp and ceremony, the Ottoman Sultan bids the two leaders farewell as they launch at the head of an army 40,000 strong, including 6,300 elite janissaries. Amid the festivities, Suleiman's Grand Vizier, Ali Pasha, remarks, "Here we have two good-humored gentlemen, always ready to relish coffee and opium, embarking on a pleasure trip to the islands. I wager that their ships are amply laden with Arabian beans and extract of henbane." To ensure success, Suleiman appoints his most trusted commander, Turgot, to a special position, advisor to the admiral and the general. Suleiman instructs Piale and Mustafa not to attempt anything without Turgot's approval. So who is this enemy waiting to resist the Ottomans? The Grand Master of the Knights Hospitaller is John de la Valette, a hardened, courageous warrior for the Christian faith. Born the same year as Suleiman, at 70, he will personally lead his men against the Turks. Only around 500 Knights Hospitaller defend Malta, along with 3,000 Maltese militia and 1,000 Spanish and Italian Habsburg soldiers. Before the siege begins, Jean de la Valette delivers a powerful exhortation to his knights. Today our faith is at stake, and whether the gospel must yield to the Quran, God is asking for the lives which we pledge to him at our profession. Happy are those who may sacrifice their lives. Historian Lord Kinross provides an excellent description of the Hospitaller's headquarters. The fortress city of Malta, on its grand harbor, the Marsa, was flanked by rocky hilltops and defended from spits of rock. These projected into the water from its southerly flank, with smaller harbors between. The strongest points were those in the center, the adjoining promontories of Ilburgo and Senglia, defended respectively by the forts of St. Angelo and St. Michael. To further strengthen the complex, the Knights have recently raised the fort of St. Elmo on the northern end of the harbor, positioned to defend the entryway to the harbor itself. May 18, 1565. The inhabitants of Malta witnessed through the morning mist the arrival of the massive Ottoman fleet. To secure a safe harbor for the Turkish ships, General Mustafa lands his troops and puts to siege the fort of St. Elmo. Some few hundred men defend the fort, while Ottoman troops numbering in the thousands attack the walls. Finally, the external defenses fall, and the Ottomans begin attacking the fort itself. The janissaries rush forward over the bridge, and with ladders scale the walls. But the Christian defenders above pour down Greek fire, which sets alight the long flowing robes of the Janissaries. As one band of Janissaries is annihilated, another rushes in to attack, only to take their turn, burning to death. Already, casualties among the Janissaries are staggering. Mustafa and Turgot had hoped St. Elmo would fall quickly, but it holds out for weeks. The Ottomans have underestimated the commitment of the knights, who, like the Ottomans themselves, are ready to die for their faith. Turkish cannons make the walls of St. Elmo quake. Christian artillery repeatedly defeats Ottoman assaults, resulting in huge Turkish casualties. One day, as Turgot stands amid the siege works, he is struck by shrapnel from either a Christian or Ottoman cannonball. Terrified that news of this veteran's death will demoralize the troops, Mustafa throws a cloak over the old admiral and has him carried to his own headquarters. There, Turgot lies dying in agony, but before he breathes his last, he hears news that St. Elmo has fallen. After a fierce and bloody battle, the defenders of St. Elmo are slain almost to a man. The Ottomans have lost over 6,000 troops, including half of their Janissaries, in the taking of this single strongpoint. Standing amid St. Elmo's ruins, Mustafa gazes out at the walls of St. Angelo, rising high and imposing before him. If this small son costs so much, he laments, what shall we have to pay for the father? Hoping to avoid another grueling struggle, Mustafa sends an offer of terms to the knights. Grand Master Jean de Valet's reply is memorable. His condition, he says, is that Mustafa fill the ditch before the fortifications of Il Burgo with Janissary corpses. Mustafa is enraged. He orders 80 galleys to be dragged overland to the Grand Harbor. There, in cooperation with the land army, he besieges the strongpoints of Il Burgo and Senglia, with their respective castles of St. Angelo and St. Michael. For 2 months, the Ottomans launched repeated assaults at the island's strongpoints, but to little effect. Thousands of Turkish soldiers die as the knights relentlessly hold the walls. Though hard-pressed, Jean de la Valette's men remain high in their morale, inspired by the bold valor of their commander. But spirits are low in the Ottoman camp, where food and ammunition are running low, while dysentery and fever run rampant. Matters aren't helped when Christian corsairs intercept desperately needed Ottoman supply ships. By September, disagreements break out between General Mustafa Pasha and Admiral Piali Pasha. Mustafa wants to remain through the winter in hopes of starving out the Christians, but Admiral Piali refuses to risk the Ottoman navy by wintering so deeply in enemy territory. This debate is interrupted by the sudden arrival of Christian reinforcements. An imperial fleet, led by Don Garcia of Toledo, Viceroy of Sicily, appears off the Maltese coast. In a bold display, the Christian ships sail past the fort of St. Angelo and deliver a 3-gun salute. The Ottomans, caught completely off guard, are unable to offer resistance. The Christian vessels land unopposed on the northern coast. Mustafa recognizes the hopelessness of this situation. He orders an immediate evacuation. But once the Ottoman fleet is setting off, Mustafa realizes that the Christian reinforcements aren't nearly so large as he had believed. In a sudden change, he turns around and orders his army to disembark once more. To the badly demoralized Ottoman troops, this is devastating news. As they reluctantly step once more onto Maltese soil, the Turks encounter a force of elite Spanish infantry. Quickly, the war-weary Ottomans falter and break and flee before the attacking Spaniards. After this final catastrophe, Mustafa again orders a withdrawal, and the surviving Ottomans fight their way back onto their ships. The siege is over. The Sultan's invincible army is defeated. As the remnants of the Ottoman army limp home for the Bosphorus, General Mustafa Pasha and Admiral Piali Pasha are faced with the stunning gravity of the situation. Of the 40,000 troops that had departed Istanbul, barely a quarter survived the siege, with nothing to show for it but a humiliating defeat. Understandably, the two commanders are nervous to meet the Sultan. They dispatch news of the disaster ahead, hoping that time will assuage Suleiman's anger. As they approach the Bosphorus, they receive orders that the fleet will not be allowed to enter the harbor of Istanbul until after dark. The Sultan had, in fact, flown into a rage when he heard of the Christian victory. Meanwhile, news of the triumph at Malta spreads across Christian Europe. Jean de la Valette's example fires the spirits of Europe's rulers, initiating a renewed alliance against the Ottomans, which will culminate in the decisive victory at Lepanto in 1571. Donations flood to Malta, and the knights are able to further bolster their defenses. For centuries, the victory is celebrated. Voltaire will one day state, "Nothing is better known than the Siege of Malta."